All right, I'm only going to deal with this once. All right, it is 2:30 in the afternoon on a mid-June day, which is why it's a little bit much to be wearing a cardigan. So if I choose to wear something, this is a little bit more appropriate. My skin is a little bit inflamed. Oh, it's so much better. So, take off my glasses. And I'm going to move this over here, and I'm just going to talk. Completely unscripted, and say what's on my mind about a number of things. Let's see. Let's change to some natural lighting, which is good. Okay. So much better. Okay. My name is Mychel Russell Ward. This is Russell Ward Studio, which I also refer to as Dream World, because this is a place, in my opinion, where when life is hard, you need to shut out the world and have a good dream. The thing about dreams, though, and nightmares, is that you wake up from them eventually. Could be a short dream, could be a long dream, but you always wake up from a dream. So what have I learned? I just sent an email out to a police officer and a couple of lawyers, and Rebecca Kaiser and Albert Onito. It's because they've tried to turn my life upside down and then gaslight me, and it's not going to work. This is the best that I've been able to figure out on my own. There is a satellite. There are actually a number of satellites up in space. And for some reason, unknown to me, people will look at other human beings through this satellite. I can't say this phenomena is totally unknown to me because I'm a native New Yorker. And if you've ever watched old Alfred Hitchcock movies, you know Rear Window. Rear Window is this Hitchcock movie about a man who sees the brutal murder of a girl, I think he calls her Miss Torso, from the apartment across the street on a hot summer night through his telescope. Again, you have to be a New Yorker to get it, because in New York City at night, between the air pollution and the light pollution, you can't see the stars. The only thing you can see is the one star. It's like the moon and Polaris. The star. There's only the one. So if you have a telescope in New York, you've just wasted $300. Literally, unless you're at someplace like the Hayden Planetarium, or you have access to a place where there are a lot fewer people, you're never going to see stars. So, in New York City, when you figure out that all you can see is the moon and the star, you will take your telescope and look around until you notice the apartment across the street and anybody who has an open window and anything interesting that they may be doing that you can see through their open window. That's Rear Window. And that's exactly what I think has been happening to me in space. So, I didn't know my life was that interesting to anyone, really. Because I'm going about my little flatland life in my little flatland world, as Carl Sagan would say in Flatland, or Cosmos, about the Tesseract in the fourth dimension. As you can see, astrophysics is one of those things that I like to talk about, but I don't talk about it very much because there's no one around here who can keep up. So, through the means of a telescope, that's really what it boils down to. I believe Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt have seen me before. They may not have seen my face, but they have seen me going around my daily business in my daily life, oblivious, completely oblivious, and writing about my life. Okay. Angelina Jolie obviously has spent a lot of time with Brad Pitt, and Katie Holmes has spent a lot of time with Tom Cruise. And both of them hate me. No, I do not know why. I don't know them. I have done nothing to them to cause them to hate me. I think my problem really is I have brown skin. I'm quite sure that Katie Holmes doesn't know anyone with brown skin. Not for real. I'm sure Angelina Jolie knows a handful of people with brown skin, but they are probably refugees. They are adopted children with brown skin from other countries, and they may be bastards that have been cast off. It's a guess. I don't know. I know that they are trying very hard to create a reality or the appearance of my identity that's totally false. They are deeply invested in saying that I'm uneducated. No, I have a bachelor's degree in economics from Connecticut College. And I studied art with Professor Andrea Wollensack, who taught me reed pen as an undergraduate. I really shouldn't do that. It's so dusty around here. Let's see, my academic background. I told you before, and I told you in writing, but you didn't want to listen before, and whether you choose to listen or not doesn't make it any less true now, does it? Let's see. Things got interesting at St. Angela Hall Academy, where I first began to learn the violin. And St. Angela Hall closed, which is important because it's a Catholic school, or it was a Catholic school, and those parish records should have been collected by the diocese. Then I went to Poly Prep, Polytechnic Preparatory Country Day School, near 95th Street in Brooklyn, at Dyker Heights. It's the one with the white clock tower. Then a year at St. Joseph's High School for girls on Willoughby, Catholic school. Then transferred 3 years at the George School, Newtown, Pennsylvania, boarding school, scholarship, naturally, because I'm bright, but I'm not wealthy. Or at least I grew up squarely upper middle class, not rich. Mom's a teacher. Actually, my mom used to work for Avon, and then she went into teaching. And my father was in the Marines, and then he left and just sort of drifted for a bit, and last I heard, he's a line haul driver. I would have been very upset about him being a line haul driver some time ago, until I started to work for Amazon Hanover, and then I saw things very differently. In any event, Uh, George School, and then I went to Connecticut College. I have a bachelor's degree in economics. From there, I spent a year at Long Island University, Brooklyn campus for the paralegal studies program. Mm. Then I worked for the city. Excuse me, allergies. Then from there, I went to law school. I went to Quinnipiac University School of Law. I have a Juris Doctorate with a certificate in taxation. I'm a corporate tax lawyer. I know, I don't look like it. I look like a muppet. Then, let's see, I sat for the New York bar exam. I failed it the first time in Albany, passed on the second time in New York at the Javits. And then, at the time, I was doing document review work. After working for Hughes, Hubbard & Reed, and then working for Patterson, Belknap, Webb & Tyler, I opened Russell Ward Studio. Actually, I began working on Russell Ward Studio in 2007, which was a corporation. It was a corporation that I opened under the Secretary of State, under the laws of New York, under the name Ixora Limited DBA Russell Ward Studio. And originally it started as a jewelry business. And then I found out that the nature of my skill set is such that only maybe the top 0.5% of the wealthiest buyers in the world can afford my jewelry. And I wouldn't want to sell it to them anyway. It's interesting. That's a whole different issue. We won't go there. We won't deal with that. So while I was in the jewelry rotation, I got into art school. That's when I attended the Art Students League of New York with a scholarship, actually a work-study scholarship. So I was working in the kitchen, making sandwiches, wiping down tabletops, and things like that for watercolor lessons. It was very difficult financing art school. I wasn't able to do it consistently, so I began the museum copyist route, which is a highly successful way of doing it. I had an interdisciplinary way of training as a fine artist, and it started with jewelry illustration. Russell Ward Studio started out with the jewelry, and a lot of it has to do with my mother. In order to improve my jewelry rendering skills, I've learned I don't really trust Rhino and CAD-CAM because you can have it and then lose your files, and then someone has stolen your prototypes and you're just dead to the world. So I think it's more secure to paint and draw your renderings under the copyright laws. So I started to attend art school for jewelry illustration, and then fashion illustration, and then fine art. And I've been painting and painting and painting and painting and painting. I was trained by the museums. I was trained by the museums that raised me since childhood. My being out here, in my opinion, it's like going away to school for a few years to refine your education, because I'm specifically an impressionist. I'm an impressionist and I have a studio practice. So coming out here to Baltimore is really about the Cone collection. It's about studying impressionist art at the Barnes and the Cone and perfecting my skills with what's here. And right now we have crossed well over into the world of racketeering, because Russell Ward Studio should have started receiving income from the sale of fine art a long time ago. I noticed that sometime, I would say 2014, was when I first began to notice the aggressive use of satellites in the hijacking and theft of my photos of, well, they're not photos taken from my database, although that exists. Satellite images of the paintings and drawings that I'm making while I'm out on the sidewalk. That's dirty. That's aggressive and that's dirty. I mean, it doesn't really change my intellectual property rights. doesn't change my constitutional rights, doesn't change anything. Just because the camera is way up in space doesn't change the fact that you took pictures of my paintings in order to reproduce them for sale without my permission. And this is a corporation. So, not only have I got racketeering, I've got copyright infringement, I now have burglary to add to it because when I shipped the bonbons to the museums, they were taken. I still can't believe anybody would be that brazen or stupid. Really. I mean, you've got to be crazy. Really, really crazy. I lived at 41 Eastern Parkway for as long as I can remember. I mean, my very first childhood memory is of a lot of yelling. And I had to be told that that was Bougainville Drive at Paris Island. But my actual memory was of Bambi. It was a Bambi decal on the wall in the bathroom at 41 Eastern Parkway from the day we moved in. And we've been there until we recently moved out in 2017. So it's not like there's really so much change. The only thing left is to receive payment for my artwork. That's all there is to it. What has this got to do with Angelina Jolie? I don't think she's ever met anyone quite like me before. I don't think Katie Holmes has met anyone like me. I don't think Nicole Kidman has met anyone like me. I know that they think that they are high and that I am low. And I don't really understand what they mean by that. What does that mean? I'm not going to speculate, because if I speculate, I would be putting words in your mouth. And that's really the biggest problem here. People get into my account and then they put words in my mouth and they say, she did it. No, she didn't. She's over here. Mychel is over here. She has an RSI at the moment. And although she's found her tube of gouache, it's really a good idea to take a nap because it's 2 minutes to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's siesta. And my allergies are kicking up. So, I have learned that Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt have been doing creative stuff, making up stories about my life. Well, that's neat. Thank you. And in that regard, I'm an only child. But it looks to me like data that is taken from my databases, data that is taken from state records, city records, municipal records. I think right now, Barack Obama, who I've never met, he wants to take my identity and all the development that has happened with the real me and distribute it out among his lady friends. And there are a minimum of 200 of these. And I learned this much at the bank. Let me do one thing to make very, very clear who I am. I made a red watercolor painting called Waterman, I think. And that is because of this. This pen takes Waterman cartridges. It is a fountain pen. It is a very special fountain pen. This is the fountain pen that I use to take the New York bar exam. So why would I use a fountain pen to take the New York bar exam? Because, how can I put it? You have to write the exam answers out by hand. And if you've been writing for 6 hours straight, your hands will cramp and they will hurt. And it takes a fountain pen with a high displacement, with a cartridge that can be swapped out, to be able to take that test and not have your hand catch fire, so to speak. That's this. This is a Pelicano. This is a fountain pen for a child, for a German child. Of course, you don't have to be German to have this pen. This pen takes Waterman ink. This is not my only Pelican, because after I sat for the test, took the test, passed it, started to work at Hughes Hubbard, I got this one. This is a Pelican. And allow me to be very specific. When I say I worked for Hughes Hubbard, I was not on their payroll. I was a contract attorney. And being a contract attorney means that you work for the temp agency that hires you out. So I worked for Hudson Global, who hired me out to Hughes Hubbard. Okay. Very important. Very important to make that distinction. So, when you go to that website, see, this is one of those times when the fact that a person is a native New Yorker is truly a relevant issue. Let's take a look at the website for City as School. Okay. City as School is a public high school in New York City. This is the website, the splash page. So what do you see? Can I do this? Is this going to work? There we are. All right. So if you are not an American and you look at this and you see this picture, you see a little boy. Wait, get rid of that. Let's get a whole image here. There will be no deception. He's a blonde. I can't seem to get rid of this green button bar at the top. Okay. So, you see there's an image of a bunch of high school kids and a little boy in a yellow t-shirt with a Jeep logo on the front, and he has blonde hair, although you can't see it because it's blocked by the border, right? And there's a bronze sculpture of a bull there, right? Right. So if you're not a native New Yorker, you would think, oh, that's Albert. Oh, that's Albert. Look how big and important Albert is. Albert is the bull. And who's that in the Jeep? Oh, that's got to be Myers. Myers' kid. That is the mirror of Myers' kid. Why? Because he's white and he's wearing a black and yellow shirt. Okay, now, for those of us who are native New Yorkers, okay, this is, I think it's called Zaccardi Park. It is in Lower Manhattan. Charging Bull is the name of that sculpture. It's a very famous sculpture that was there long before Albert. Charging. This is one of the most famous sculptures in New York City, and it's at Bowling Green. And this is what it looks like. And it represents the Wall Street bull market. If you are a stock market trader and you're praying for a bull market instead of a bear market, bull markets go up, bear markets go down. If you want a bull market and you're a stock trader, you're going to find this sculpture and you're going to go rub his testicles. So if you go look at the back of that sculpture, the testicles are shiny. Oh, that's got nothing to do with Albert. That sculpture's been there for a long time. But you know what? He's not the only one there. There is another sculpture that was put there that I don't think Albert knows about because it was installed. I believe it was installed after I was dragged out of town. I think it was called Defiant Girl. Charging Bull. Here it is. Uh-huh. Now you get it. I think she's called Defiant Girl. They put her in when I was dragged out of town, and people come around her and they make leis. Literally, they will make a Hawaiian lei of white flowers and put it around her neck. What is her name? Defiant Girl? I think it's Defiant Girl. Well, this little girl is literally like, and what? I don't know you. Dare you to move. Fearless Girl. That's her name. The one who will not move. So, things are not as they seem. If you're a native New Yorker, you know quite a bit better. I don't know if Fearless Girl has since been moved with her flowers. So why do we care about the City High School website? Because it's a public high school in New York, which means you have to be a city resident to be able to attend the school. And far more importantly, Basquiat went to that school. It's a very well-educated little Haitian boy who was made to look like a street urchin when he wasn't. And that should sound familiar because for a while, I know people who didn't know me thought that I'm some sort of street urchin, just because for a while I did have a Bronx address. Well, why was I in the Bronx? I was there for the zoning. Russell Ward Studio made jewelry, which means you need an acetylene blowtorch, which means you need mixed use or industrial use zoning in order to be able to have a B tank in the residence. Actually, in order to have a B tank on the premises at all. Because, frankly, that area is not really supposed to be a residence. That's why it's called mixed use zoning, from which you do not need a variance. It is true that for a different location in Brooklyn, you could get a variance, but for what I do, you really wouldn't want to. I mean, all that hammering and hammering and hammering. I was notorious for being up at 10 o'clock at night with a hammer, and I swear, everywhere else in town, my neighbors would have said, I hate you. I hate you and your hammer. That's how I wound up here. Ruth hated me with my hammer. So, all of the individuals who are pretending to be me by saying, this photo that I have taken from this database with this metadata, I did this, this is me, have sex with me, and then call me by a name other than my own as a proxy. Nah. Do you really find that convincing? I don't find that convincing. You know, every single one of those photos, when they really add up, they add up to a group of life experiences that are unique to me. If you're thinking about Detroit, baby arms, it's because I love engineering. I love big engines. I love anything that makes a lot of noise and puts out huge amounts of power. And you can do something really stupid in that. Of course, I wouldn't be the one doing anything stupid in that. But you know I'm going to be up in the front saying, "Ooh! Turn it up!" Oh my god. The auto industry misses me. I know. Germany misses me. Life is boring without me. Well, according to this thing here, I've got 5 minutes left. I'm going to take a nap. I think the probability is pretty high that in the last 4 years, there isn't a single person among Barack Obama's acquaintance who has put pencil to paper to draw anything even remotely interesting. Not really. The point of this exercise wasn't just to lynch me, drag me from my home, and make me scream and feel unheard and powerless. That's the key word. It's also to try to call into question my identity by not speaking to me. And more importantly, a lot of it is about trying to undermine me and disenfranchise me by making it look like nobody listens to you. I have learned that a lot of people listen to me because when I say things, it's usually right. I check what I say before I say it so that I don't make an embarrassing mistake, and people don't like to be embarrassed. People also don't like to be set up to fail, so there won't be any A&R. What else? Well, it's nap time. So, Angelina Jolie, I'm sorry to say this, but I'm not a Hollywood bastard, and saying you want to tag along is not going to allow you to have access to my intellectual property rights, even though I find it very exhausting. You could have asked me, but if you'd asked me, you would have resolved your questions, and I don't think you want them resolved. I think you just want to pick a fight. Your decision. Okay, so the museums are going to come for me whenever they're ready. Whenever they want to. I'm not going to be shipping anything else out. So, honestly, everything that has been shipped should have been seized by the FBI already. There should be nothing loose. And I know that there's going to be an attempt to pay people not to listen to me, but think about that for a minute. I'm the only person in here who actually has like an education other than the lawyers who says things that people need to hear. Not what they want to hear, what they need to hear. I have done a background check on the people. I have done preliminary background checks on the people who hate me the most. The overwhelming majority do not have high school diplomas. The majority do not have college degrees. There isn't a single person who has an advanced degree except Michelle Obama. And I have doubts whether when she achieved her advanced degree, meaning her law degree, that she carried away with her a body of knowledge that she replenishes. That's what it boils down to. People are here to make me disgorge my education, even though my student loan bills have not been paid. And they are trying to steal my legal identity and call it a rental by paying me with a bastard child. No. Okay, look, I've got to go. I'm down to 1%. Bye.